The massive starship Cosmic Dawn moved through space like a silver arrow, cutting through black water. Inside its metal halls, 12 different alien species worked together on the most important mission in galactic history. They were heading to the Outer Rim territories, places where few had gone and fewer had returned. Hyunwoo stood in the main corridor, his small frame pressed against the wall as a group of Vilthan warriors walked past. These reptilian creatures stood nearly 8 feet tall, their green scales shimmering under the ship's lights. Their heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway as they moved with the confidence of natural predators. Behind them came 3 Noxari scientists, their crystalline bodies reflecting rainbow colors as they glided smoothly down the corridor. Even they towered over Hyunwoo at 7 feet tall, their diamond-like faces showing no emotion as they passed the small human without acknowledgement. Hyunwoo was used to being ignored. At 5 feet and 4 inches tall, he was the shortest crew member on the entire ship. Even his fellow humans were much taller than him. Captain Dong-hyun stood 6 feet 2 inches, and the other human crew members were all at least 6 feet tall. Sometimes Hyunwoo felt like a child among adults, but he was not a child. He was 28 years old and one of the best maintenance engineers in the human fleet. His small hands could reach places others could not. His quick mind could solve problems that stumped larger, supposedly smarter beings. Yet none of that seemed to matter to his crewmates. The morning briefing was held in the ship's main conference room. Hyunwoo took his usual seat at the back of the room, trying to make himself invisible. The other crew members filled the chairs around the large oval table. Captain Dong-hyun stood at the head of the table, his face serious as he looked at the assembled group. "We are 3 days away from Kepler 442c, the captain announced. "This planet could hold the key to understanding life in the Outer Rim. Each of your species will contribute their unique abilities to make this mission successful." Kethmore, the lead Vilthan warrior, leaned back in his chair. His yellow eyes scanned the room before settling on Hyunwoo. "Captain, I must ask again why we brought such a small human on this important mission. Surely there were better specimens available." Several crew members turned to look at Hyunwoo. He felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment but kept his face calm. He had heard this question many times before. "Hyunwoo is here because he is skilled," Captain Dong-hyun replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Even his own captain seemed unsure about defending him. Velandra, the lead Noxari scientist, made a sound like wind chimes tinkling. "Perhaps the small one could be useful for crawling through maintenance shafts. Though I wonder if he has the strength even for that simple task." Laughter rippled through the room. Even some of the human crew members smiled. Hyunwoo had worked with most of these humans for 2 years, but they had never fully accepted him as an equal. "The Outer Rim is dangerous," added Thaindus, a massive Gorlak warrior whose rocky skin made him look like a walking mountain. "We need strong fighters, not tiny maintenance workers. What happens when we face real danger?" Hyunwoo wanted to speak up, to defend himself, but he had learned that arguing only made things worse. Instead, he focused on the mission briefing, taking careful notes while the others continued their casual mockery. The ship's AI, a sophisticated computer system called Central, suddenly interrupted the meeting. "Alert, we are approaching the Nebula of Whispers. All navigation systems are experiencing interference." The room fell silent. The Nebula of Whispers was famous throughout the galaxy as a ship killer. Standard navigation systems failed inside its swirling clouds of charged particles. Many ships had been lost trying to cross it. Captain Dong-hyun frowned at his control panel. "Central, what are our options?" "Standard navigation is impossible. Long-range sensors are offline. We need an alternative method to cross safely." The alien crew members began talking at once. Kethmore suggested using brute force to push through quickly. Velandra wanted to map the nebula using mathematical calculations. Thaindus thought they should find a way around it, even if it took weeks longer. Hyunwoo studied the readings on his small tablet. He had been working on the ship's systems for months and knew them better than anyone. While the others argued, he quietly analyzed the data. The ship had secondary sensor arrays that most people forgot about. These older sensors were less sophisticated, but they worked on different principles. They might function where the main sensors failed. Combined with manual piloting instead of computer navigation, they could guide the ship through the nebula safely. He raised his hand tentatively. "Excuse me, I think I might have an idea." The room gradually fell quiet, but not because they wanted to hear his suggestion. The silence felt uncomfortable, filled with barely hidden amusement. "Yes, little human?" Kethmore asked, his voice dripping with false politeness. Please share your wisdom with us. Hyunwoo felt his heart beating faster, but he pressed on. The secondary sensor arrays should still work inside the nebula. They use different technology. If we switch to manual piloting and use those sensors as guides, we might be able to navigate through safely. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Velandra made her wind chime laugh again. The maintenance worker thinks he understands navigation better than our experts. Stick to fixing pipes, small one, Thaindus rumbled. Leave the real work to those who know what they are doing. Even Captain Dong-hyun looked embarrassed. Thank you for the suggestion, Hyunwoo, but I think we need more sophisticated solutions. The meeting continued with increasingly complex plans. None of them addressed the basic problem that their main systems would not work inside the nebula. Hyunwoo sat quietly, watching his crewmates create elaborate solutions that would fail as soon as they encountered the nebula's interference. 3 hours later, the cosmic dawn entered the nebula of whispers. As predicted, all main navigation systems failed immediately. The ship drifted helplessly in the swirling clouds of energy, unable to see where it was going. Emergency protocols activated, Central announced, switching to backup navigation systems. Hyunwoo watched from his workstation as the AI quietly implemented exactly the solution he had suggested. The secondary sensors came online. Manual piloting engaged. The ship began moving slowly but steadily through the nebula, guided by the older, simpler systems that actually worked in this environment. It took 6 hours to cross the nebula safely. When they finally emerged into clear space, the crew cheered and congratulated each other on their successful navigation. The Veltan pilot accepted praise for his skilled flying. The Noxari scientists were commended for their excellent sensor readings. Nobody mentioned that they had used Hyunwoo's idea. Nobody acknowledged that the small human had solved the problem, while the larger, supposedly smarter crew members had failed. The credit went to others, as it always did. Hyunwoo did not complain. He had learned that being right was not enough. Being useful was not enough. In a galaxy full of giants, being small meant being invisible, even when you saved everyone's lives. But as the cosmic dawn continued toward its destination, Hyunwoo could not shake the feeling that bigger challenges lay ahead. Challenges where size and strength might not be enough. Challenges where the ability to think differently, to see what others missed, might finally matter. He did not know it yet, but those challenges were waiting for him on a planet called Kepler 440c, a planet where the smallest crew member would prove to be the most important of all. The planet Kepler 442c filled the main viewing screen like a green and blue jewel floating in space. White clouds swirled across its surface, and 3 small moons orbited slowly around it. The sensor readings showed a world rich with life, exactly what the research team had hoped to find. Beautiful planet, Captain Dong-hyun said as he studied the data streaming across his control panel. Oxygen-rich atmosphere, moderate temperatures, abundant water sources. This could be the discovery of the century. The alien crew members gathered around the viewing screens, their various forms creating strange shadows in the blue light. Even the normally reserved Noxari scientists seemed excited about the possibilities below. Hyunwoo stood at his usual position near the back of the bridge. He watched the planet slowly rotate, noting the vast forests that covered most of the land masses. Something about those dark green areas made him feel uneasy, though he could not explain why. Prepare the exploration teams, Captain Dong-hyun ordered. We will establish a base camp in the northern grasslands, away from the dense forest regions. Standard protocol for unknown worlds. Kethmore stepped forward, his reptilian features showing eager anticipation. My warriors and I will scout the dangerous interior regions. We are best suited for facing whatever threats this world might hold. Agreed. The captain nodded. Thaindus, your Gorlak team will handle heavy construction and defense. Velandra, your scientist will analyze all biological samples. Wispanala, your Etherian scouts will map the immediate area. The assignments continued, each alien species receiving tasks that matched their natural abilities. The Valthon warriors would explore dangerous territories. The massive Gorlak would build fortifications. The swift Etherian would gather intelligence. Everyone had an important role to play, except Hyunwoo. The human maintenance team will establish The safe zone perimeter and handle equipment setup, Captain Dong-hyun announced finally. Base camp operations only, no dangerous exploration. Hyun-woo felt the familiar sting of disappointment. Once again, he was assigned to the safest, most boring tasks, while others got to explore and make discoveries. He would spend his time setting up communication arrays and checking power generators while the real adventure happened elsewhere. The transport shuttles launched 6 hours later. Hyun-woo found himself crammed into the supply shuttle with boxes of equipment and 3 other human technicians. Through the small window, he watched the other shuttles carrying the exploration teams toward different landing zones across the planet. The base camp location was perfect from a safety perspective. Rolling grassland stretched for miles in every direction, offering clear sight lines and easy defense. The nearest forest was over 20 kilometers away, far enough to avoid most planetary dangers. As the humans began unloading equipment, the other teams reported in from their various locations. The communications crackled with excitement as each group described what they were finding. Incredible plant diversity in Sector 7, Velandra reported. At least 40 unknown species in the first kilometer alone. Large animal tracks near the river, Wispanala added. Herbivores probably, nothing threatening. The forest canopy is incredibly thick, came Kethmore's voice. Perfect hunting ground. We are moving deeper to investigate. Hyun-woo set up the communication relay while listening to the reports. The other human technicians seemed content with their safe assignment, but he found himself wishing he could see what the exploration teams were discovering. The first day passed without incident. The base camp took shape quickly with prefabricated buildings and defensive barriers. The exploration teams continued their work, sending back samples and data that excited the scientists. On the second day, things began to change. Team 7 to base camp. Wispanala's voice came through the communicator, but something was wrong. The usually calm Etherian sounded nervous. We found something strange. Large claw marks on the trees. Very large. Captain Dong-hyun frowned at the communication console. How large? 2 meters long, cut deep into hardwood. Whatever made these marks is bigger than anything in our databases. A chill ran through the base camp. The alien crew members exchanged worried glances. Even the confident Veltan warriors seemed less eager to continue their exploration. But the real shock came on the third day. Team 3 is overdue for check-in, the communication officer reported. Team 3 was composed of Gorlak heavy warriors, the strongest and most durable species on the ship. If something had happened to them, it was serious. Send a rescue team, Captain Dong-hyun ordered immediately. The rescue team consisted of Kethmore and 4 Velthan warriors, armed with the best weapons available. They departed for Team 3's last known location with orders to report back within 4 hours. 4 hours passed, then 6, then 8. The rescue team never reported back. Panic began to spread through the base camp like wildfire. The alien crew members who had seemed so confident just days before now huddled together in small groups, speaking in worried whispers. The humans tried to maintain calm, but even they could feel the fear growing. On the 4th day, they sent another rescue team. This one included members from 3 different species, equipped with heavy weapons and armor. They followed the same route as the first rescue team, tracking their movements through sensor readings and communication logs. This team lasted 6 hours before their signals went dead. What is out there? Velandra asked, her crystalline voice shaking with fear. What could defeat our strongest warriors so easily? Nobody had an answer. The exploration of Kepler 442c had become a nightmare, with teams disappearing one after another into the dark forests. Whatever lived in those woods was beyond anything they had encountered before. Then on the 5th day they got their answer. Kethmore stumbled out of the forest edge, barely alive. His green scales were torn and bloody. His armor was shredded like paper. His eyes held a terror that Hyun-woo had never seen before. The proud Veltan warrior who had mocked the small human just days earlier now shook like a frightened child. When the medical team tried to treat his wounds, he flinched at every touch. What happened out there? Captain Dong-hyun asked gently. What did you see? Kethmore's voice came out as a broken whisper. Shadows, moving shadows with claws like razors. They hunt in packs, silent as death itself. Our weapons did nothing. They cut through our armor like it was cloth. He grabbed Captain Dong Hyun's arm with desperate strength. They are called Voraks, the locals, the ones we found hiding in caves. They whispered the name before they died. Apex hunters. Nothing stops them. Nothing. The base camp fell completely silent. Everyone had heard stories of the Voraks, whispered legends from the deepest parts of space. Most had thought they were myths, scary stories told to frighten young space travelers. But the legends were real. "How many of your team survived?" the captain asked quietly. Kethmore closed his eyes. "Just me. They let me live to carry the warning. The Voraks are coming for the base camp. They smell our fear, and they are coming." Outside the base camp walls, something howled in the distance. It was not the sound of any normal animal. It was the sound of death itself announcing its arrival. The alien crew members who had once seemed so powerful and confident now cowered behind their energy shields and defensive walls. The mighty warriors, who had mocked Hyunwoo for his small size, now shook with terror at the thought of facing the Voraks. But Hyunwoo did not shake. As the howls grew closer and the panic spread through the camp, he found himself strangely calm. While others prepared for their final battle, he studied the claw marks Kethmore had brought back. While others prayed to their various gods, he analyzed the attack patterns the survivor described. The Voraks were coming, and everyone expected to die. Everyone except the smallest member of the crew, who had begun to form a very different plan. The emergency meeting was held in the main command center, but it felt more like a funeral gathering than a military briefing. The surviving crew members sat around the metal table, their faces showing fear and desperation. Outside, the howls of the Voraks echoed through the night air. Captain Dong Hyun looked older than he had just a week ago. The weight of losing so many crew members pressed down on his shoulders like a heavy stone. "We cannot abandon our people," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "There might still be survivors out there." "Survivors?" Kethmore laughed bitterly. "I saw what those things did to Thaindus, the strongest warrior in 3 sectors torn apart like paper. There are no survivors, Captain. Only the dead and those who will soon join them." The Violthan warrior who had once strutted through the ship corridors with pride now hunched in his chair like a broken bird. His wounds had healed, but the terror in his eyes remained fresh. Velandra's crystalline form flickered with nervous energy. "Our governments expect results from this mission. We cannot simply flee at the first sign of danger." "The first sign?" Kethmore snarled. "We have lost 18 crew members to these monsters. How many more must die before you call it enough?" The debate continued in circles. Some wanted immediate evacuation. Others insisted they had to attempt rescue operations. A few suggested carpet bombing the forest from orbit, though everyone knew that would destroy the very research they had come to conduct. Through it all, Hyunwoo sat quietly in his corner chair, studying the data they had collected about the Voraks attacks. The patterns were fascinating once you looked past the horror. The creatures were not random killers. They hunted with intelligence and purpose. "Perhaps we could negotiate," suggested Nira, one of the Etherian diplomats who had arrived with the second wave of personnel. "Many species can be reasoned with if approached correctly." Kethmore slammed his clawed hand on the table. "Negotiate? These are apex predators, not diplomats. They exist to kill, nothing more." "Every species has motivations," Nira insisted. "If we could understand what they want—" "They want us dead," Kethmore interrupted. "That is their motivation. That is their purpose. They are perfect killing machines and we are prey." The argument was interrupted by the wail of emergency sirens. The base camp's perimeter sensors had detected movement in the tall grass surrounding their position. Multiple contacts moving fast, heading directly for the main gates. "All personnel to defensive positions," Captain Dong Hyun ordered over the communication system. "This is not a drill." The crew members scrambled for their assigned battle stations. The automated defense turrets swiveled toward the detected threats. Energy weapons charged with high-pitched whines. Everyone who could hold a weapon took position along the defensive walls. Everyone except Hyunwoo. While others rushed to fight positions, he remained seated at the table, still studying his datapad. The information fascinated him more than the approaching danger frightened him. The Voraks moved in specific patterns. They attacked certain targets while avoiding others. There was logic to their behavior. Human, Kethamor shouted at him. Take position! They are coming! Hyunwoo looked up calmly. I know. But look at these movement patterns. They are not attacking randomly. See how they circle before approaching? They are testing our defenses, learning our capabilities. So what? Kethmore demanded. Knowing how they hunt will not save us from their claws. Maybe not, Hyunwoo admitted. But understanding them might. The first attack came just after midnight. 3 Vorax emerged from the darkness like living shadows, their obsidian black forms barely visible against the night sky. The automated turrets opened fire immediately, sending streams of energy bolts toward the approaching creatures. The Vorax moved like liquid mercury, flowing around the energy blasts with impossible grace. They reached the outer fence in seconds, their razor-sharp claws slicing through reinforced metal as if it were soft cloth. The crew members opened fire with their personal weapons, filling the air with energy beams and projectile rounds. The noise was deafening, but their shots seemed to have little effect. The Vorax were simply too fast, too agile to hit with conventional weapons. But then something strange happened. Instead of pressing their attack, the Vorax stopped. They stood at the breach in the fence, completely still, as if waiting for something. The crew continued firing, but the creatures made no move to advance or retreat. After 30 seconds of this standoff, the Vorax melted back into the darkness as quickly as they had appeared. The attack was over, leaving the defenders confused and shaken. What just happened? Captain Donghyun demanded. Why did they retreat? Nobody had an answer. The Vorax had easily breached their defenses and could have slaughtered the entire base camp. Instead, they had simply observed and withdrawn. The second attack came 2 nights later. This time, 5 Vorax approached from different directions simultaneously. Again, they easily penetrated the outer defenses. Again, they stopped just short of engaging the main camp. Again, they withdrew without explanation. By the third attack, a pattern had emerged. The Vorax were not trying to kill the crew members. They were studying them, learning their behaviors and reactions. Each attack revealed more about human and alien defensive strategies. They are playing with us, Velandra said during the morning briefing after the third encounter, like predators toying with their prey before the kill. No, Hyunwoo said quietly. They are learning. Each attack teaches them something new about how we think and fight. Kethmore turned his yellow eyes toward the small human. And what good does knowing that do us? We still cannot stop them. Hyunwoo set down his datapad and looked around the table at his crewmates. Maybe we do not need to stop them. Maybe we need to understand what they want. They want to kill us, Kethmore repeated for the 100th time. Then why have they not done it? Hyunwoo asked. They have had 3 perfect opportunities. Our defenses cannot stop them. They could have wiped us out on the first night. So why are we still alive? The question hung in the air like smoke. Nobody had a good answer, because nobody had really thought about it before. They had been so focused on surviving that they had not considered why survival was even possible. Perhaps they are saving us for some ritual, suggested Nira. Some species prefer to hunt, according to traditional ceremonies, or maybe they are waiting for reinforcements, added Velandra, building up their numbers for a final assault. Hyunwoo shook his head. I think they are testing us, seeing how we respond to different types of pressure. They are intelligent hunters, and intelligent hunters study their prey before the real hunt begins. Captain Donghyun frowned. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that someone needs to go out there and study them back. Someone needs to observe the Vorax in their natural environment and figure out what they really want from us. The room erupted in protests. Several crew members spoke at once, all saying the same thing in different languages. It was suicide. It was madness. It was impossible. You would be killed instantly, Kethmore said flatly. The Vorax do not distinguish between species. They hunt and kill everything that enters their territory. Maybe, Hyunwoo agreed, but maybe not. I am smaller than the rest of you. I move differently. I might be able to observe them without triggering their hunting instincts. This is insane, Captain Donghyun said. I cannot authorize such a mission. It would be sending you to certain death. Hyunwoo stood up from his chair. With respect, Captain, staying here is also certain death. The Vorax are learning everything about us while we learn nothing about them. Eventually, they will know enough to kill us all efficiently. Our only chance is to understand them better than they understand us. He looked around the table at the faces of his crewmates. Some showed fear. Some showed anger. Some showed pity for the small human who had clearly lost his mind under the pressure. "I'm going out there tonight," Hyunwoo announced, with or without permission. Captain Dong-hyun started to object, but Hyunwoo was already walking toward the door. The smallest member of the crew, the one they had all mocked and dismissed, was about to do something that none of the larger, stronger, supposedly braver, crew members would dare attempt. He was going to walk into the darkness and face the apex predators of the galaxy armed with nothing but his curiosity and his uniquely human ability to see possibilities where others saw only death. The alien jungle of Kepler 442c was nothing like the forests of Earth. Twisted trees reached toward the sky like gnarled fingers, their purple leaves creating a canopy so thick that almost no starlight reached the ground. Strange bioluminescent fungi provided the only illumination, casting eerie blue and green shadows that danced with every breath of wind. Hyunwoo moved through this nightmare landscape with careful steps. His basic survival gear felt pathetically inadequate against the unknown dangers surrounding him. A simple recording device hung from his belt, along with his engineer's toolkit and enough food and water for 3 days. The other crew members had tried to stop him from leaving the base camp. Captain Dong-hyun had actually ordered him confined to quarters, but Hyunwoo had slipped away during the night shift change. By the time they discovered his absence, he was already deep in the forest. He had been walking for 2 hours when he encountered his first Vorax. The creature materialized from the shadows like death itself, taking physical form, 12 feet of pure predator, covered in obsidian black armor that seemed to absorb light. 6 limbs ended in claws that could slice through steel. A head that was all teeth and cold intelligence turned toward the small human with obvious interest. Every instinct screamed at Hyunwoo to run. His heart hammered against his ribs so hard he thought it might burst. His legs trembled with the desperate urge to flee. But instead of running, he did something that probably saved his life. He stood perfectly still and watched. The Vorax approached slowly, its movements flowing like liquid mercury. Each step was perfectly silent despite its massive size. Its multiple eyes studied the human with the intensity of a scientist examining a new specimen. Hyunwoo forced himself to breathe slowly and evenly. He kept his hands visible and empty. He made no sudden movements. Most importantly, he showed no fear in his posture or expression, even though terror threatened to overwhelm his rational mind. The Vorax stopped just 3 feet away. This close, Hyunwoo could see the incredible detail of its construction. The armor plates were not just black, but contained subtle patterns that shifted in the dim light. The claws were not crude weapons, but precision instruments, each one perfectly balanced for different types of cutting. For nearly a full minute, predator and prey studied each other in absolute silence. Then, without warning, the Vorax turned and melted back into the shadows, leaving Hyunwoo alone and shaking with reaction. But he was alive. Somehow, impossibly, the apex predator had chosen not to kill him. The second encounter came 6 hours later. This time, Hyunwoo was ready. When the Vorax appeared, he remained calm and observant. This creature was slightly smaller than the first, with different markings on its armor. It watched him for a shorter time before disappearing. By his 3rd day in the forest, Hyunwoo had encountered 7 different Vorax. Each meeting followed the same pattern. The creatures would approach, study him intently, then withdraw without violence. They were clearly intelligent, clearly curious, and clearly operating according to some code of behavior that he did not yet understand. But he was learning. The Vorax marked their territory with claw scratches on specific trees. The scratches were not random but formed patterns that seemed to convey information about the creature that made them. Size, strength, hunting range, and social status were all encoded in the marks. They hunted in coordinated groups, but each individual had a specific role. Some were scouts who located prey. Others were drivers who herded victims toward kill zones. The largest ones were finishers who delivered the fatal blows. Most importantly, they operated according to a strict hierarchy. The strongest Vorax led the hunts, while younger ones learned by observation. It was not unlike the pack behavior of wolves, except infinitely more sophisticated. On his 3rd night in the forest, Hyunwoo made his most important discovery. He was studying a particularly complex set of territorial markings when he heard the sound of approaching Vorax. But this time, they did not try to hide their presence. 3 creatures emerged from the undergrowth in formation. The one in the center was larger than any Hyunwoo had seen before. easily 14 feet tall with armor that bore the scars of countless battles. The other two flanked it like bodyguards. This was clearly a leader, an alpha among predators. Its presence radiated authority and power that made the air itself seem heavier. When it looked at Hyunwoo, he felt like a mouse being examined by a dragon. But instead of fear, Hyunwoo felt a strange sense of recognition. This creature commanded respect not through terror but through competence. It had earned its position through skill and intelligence, not just brute strength. Without thinking, Hyunwoo did something that would have seemed insane to his crewmates. He bowed slightly, showing the same respect he would give to a superior officer. It was a gesture of acknowledgement between equals, not the cowering submission of prey before predator. The Alpha Vorax tilted its massive head slightly, studying this unprecedented behavior. For a long moment the forest held its breath. Then the Alpha made a sound that was almost musical, a series of harmonics that conveyed complex meaning. Hyunwoo did not understand the language, but he understood the tone. It was not threatening. It was curious, perhaps even approving. The Alpha turned to one of its companions and made another series of sounds. The smaller Vorax disappeared into the forest, returning minutes later with what looked like a piece of metal torn from Starship hull. It bore markings that identified it as belonging to one of the lost exploration teams. The Alpha placed the metal fragment at Hyunwoo's feet, then stepped back. It was clearly a gift or perhaps a test. What would the small human do with this evidence of his species' fate? Hyunwoo picked up the fragment carefully, examining the claw marks that had torn it from whatever larger piece it had come from. The cuts were precise, surgical. This was not the work of mindless beasts, but of intelligent beings using their claws as tools. He looked up at the Alpha and spoke aloud for the first time since entering the forest. You are not just hunters. You are artists. You take pride in the precision of your work. The Alpha could not understand his words, but it seemed to sense his meaning. It made another musical sound, this one clearly expressing approval. Then it did something that shocked Hyunwoo to his core. It extended one massive clawed hand toward him, palm up in what could only be interpreted as an invitation to touch. With trembling fingers, Hyunwoo reached out and briefly touched the offered claw. The Alpha's armor was surprisingly warm, and he could feel the incredible strength contained within that deceptively graceful form. It was a moment of connection across species barriers. Predator and prey, alien and human, apex hunter and small engineer, finding common ground in mutual respect and curiosity. When Hyunwoo finally withdrew his hand, the Alpha made one final sound. This time the meaning was unmistakable even without translation. It was a farewell but also an invitation. The small human was welcome in this forest. He had proven himself worthy of consideration. The three Vorax melted back into the shadows, leaving Hyunwoo alone with his racing thoughts. He had spent 3 days expecting to die, only to discover that death was not inevitable. The Vorax were not mindless killers, but sophisticated beings with their own culture and values. More importantly, they could recognize and respect courage when they saw it. His crewmates had cowered behind their weapons and barriers, showing only fear and aggression. But Hyunwoo had approached them with curiosity and respect, and they had responded in kind. As he began his journey back to base camp, Hyunwoo realized that everything was about to change. The small human who had been mocked and dismissed by his colleagues had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. He had made peaceful contact with the apex predators of the universe. And somehow he suspected that was only the beginning. The base camp erupted in chaos when Hyunwoo walked through the main gate. He was dirty, exhausted, and covered in small cuts from thorns and branches, but he was alive. The impossible had happened. The small human had spent 3 days in Vorax territory and returned to tell about it. Medical team to the main entrance. Captain Dong-hyun's voice echoed through the communication system. Prepare for emergency treatment. But Hyunwoo waved off the medics when they arrived with their equipment. I am fine. Just tired. I need to speak with everyone immediately. The crew members gathered in the main conference room, their faces showing a mixture of disbelief, relief, and suspicion. How had the weakest member of their group survived where their strongest warriors had failed? Some whispered that he must have hidden in caves the entire time. Others suggested the Vorax had simply not found him. Kethmore was the most vocal skeptic. Impossible. No one survives 3 days alone in that forest. The small human is lying to make himself seem important. I have proof, Hyun-woo said quietly. He placed the metal fragment on the conference table. This came from one of our lost shuttles. The Alpha Vorax gave it to me as a gift. The room fell silent. Everyone recognized the twisted piece of hull plating. The precise claw marks were unmistakable signatures of Vorax craftsmanship. Alpha, Captain Dong-hyun asked carefully. You encountered a pack leader? More than encountered. I communicated with it. The Vorax are not mindless killers. They are intelligent beings with their own culture and social structure. They operate according to codes of honor that we do not understand. Velandra leaned forward, her crystalline form flickering with interest. What kind of codes? They respect courage and despise cowardice. They admire skill and precision in hunting. Most importantly, they recognize beings who approach them with honor rather than fear or aggression. The explanation continued for over an hour. Hyun-woo described the territorial markings, the pack hierarchies, the sophisticated communication systems. He explained how the Vorax had tested him repeatedly, evaluating his behavior and responses. They never intended to kill me, he concluded. They were curious about a creature that did not run or attack when confronted. I showed them respect and they returned it. Respect? Kethmore snarled. These monsters killed 18 of our crew members. Where was their respect then? They saw your teams as invaders and threats. Large groups with heavy weapons moving through their territory without permission. In Vorax culture, such behavior demands a violent response. Before anyone could respond to Hyun-woo's explanation, the base camp's alarm sirens began wailing. The perimeter sensors had detected something massive approaching from the forest. Something much larger than the previous Vorax scouts. All personnel to battle stations, Captain Dong-hyun ordered automatically. But as the crew members rushed toward their defensive positions, Hyun-woo remained seated. Wait, do not activate the weapon systems. Are you insane? Kethmore demanded. The biggest Vorax we have ever seen is heading straight for us. Exactly. The biggest. That means it is probably the supreme alpha of this region. If we show aggression, we will all die. But if we show respect, we might survive. Captain Dong-hyun hesitated, torn between military protocol and the incredible claims of his smallest crew member. How can you be certain? I cannot be certain. But I am more certain of this than I am of our chances in a direct fight. The debate was interrupted by the arrival of the creature itself. It emerged from the forest edge like a living mountain of black armor and deadly grace, 15 feet tall, bearing the scars of countless battles, radiating an aura of absolute authority that made even the base camp's defensive system seem insignificant. This was not just an alpha Vorax. This was the apex of apex predators, the ultimate hunter that other hunters feared. The crew members froze in terror. Energy weapons charged but remained unfired. Nobody wanted to be the first to provoke this magnificent and terrifying creature. The Supreme Alpha approached the base camp's main gate without hurry. Its multiple eyes surveyed the defensive positions and weapons with what seemed like mild amusement. When it reached the gate, it stopped and made a series of complex harmonic sounds. It is speaking, Hyun-woo said, standing up from the conference table. It wants to communicate. A mechanical voice suddenly filled the air, speaking in perfectly accented galactic standard. The Supreme Alpha wore a translation device, apparently salvaged from previous encounters with spacefaring species. I am Deathwalker in Silence, Supreme Alpha of the Western Territories. I seek the small one who walks with shadow and does not break. Every eye in the base camp turned toward Hyun-woo. The Supreme Alpha was asking for him specifically. Somehow, word of his forest expedition had reached the highest levels of Vorax society. Captain Dong-hyun stepped forward nervously. I am the leader of this group. If you wish to communicate, you should speak with me. Deathwalker in Silence turned its massive head toward the captain.
You are the leader of cowards who hide behind walls and weapons.
I seek the small one who showed honor in my domain. The insult hit home, but nobody dared respond with anger. The Supreme Alpha could have slaughtered them all with casual ease. Instead, it was offering to talk. Hyun-woo walked slowly toward the main gate. His crewmates watched in stunned silence as their smallest member prepared to face the galaxy's most feared predator in single combat or negotiation. I am here, Hyun-woo said simply. You wish to speak with me? Deathwalker in Silence studied him intently. In 10,000 years of hunting across the stars, I have encountered only 6 beings worthy of the title Kethmiran. The honored hunter. You would be the 7th. The translation device explained what followed. Kethmiran was the highest honor Vorax culture could bestow upon another being. It recognized someone who possessed the courage, skill, and wisdom to hunt alongside the apex predators as an equal. I do not hunt, Hyunwoo said honestly. I fix machines and solve problems. You hunt understanding where others hunt only death. You track knowledge where others track only prey. These are the qualities of Kethmiran. What happened next would be remembered throughout galactic history. Deathwalker in silence performed a ceremony that had been witnessed by fewer than a dozen beings in the known universe. It removed one of its own claws, a token of ultimate respect, and placed it around Hyunwoo's neck on a simple cord. You are Kethmiran. You are kin to the apex hunters. Any Vorax who harms you dishonors our entire species. Any who aid you gain honor in the eyes of all packs. The Supreme Alpha then made a gesture that shocked even Hyunwoo. It lowered its massive head in a slight bow, showing respect to the small human engineer. Your people are under our protection now. The ones who were taken will be returned. Those who died fell in honorable battle and will be remembered. True to its word, Deathwalker in silence summoned the surviving members of the lost exploration teams. They emerged from the forest in small groups, escorted by Vorax guards who treated them with surprising gentleness. The rescued crew members were confused and frightened but physically unharmed. The Vorax had kept them prisoner but provided food, water, and medical care. They had been studying human behavior just as Hyunwoo had been studying Vorax behavior. As the reunion continued, Deathwalker in silence spoke privately with Hyunwoo. Your species interests us greatly, small Kethmiran. You show potential that other species lack. Perhaps we will meet again among the stars. The Supreme Alpha then did something unprecedented. It offered humanity a formal alliance, safe passage through Vorax territories, protection from other apex predators, access to hunting grounds that no other species had ever seen, all because one small human had shown the courage to approach them with respect rather than fear. The news traveled across the galaxy faster than the fastest starships. Within days of the Cosmic Dawn's return to civilized space, every major government, military organization, and research institution knew about the impossible alliance between humanity and the Vorax. The small human engineer who had been mocked for his size had accomplished what entire battle fleets could not. He had turned the galaxy's most feared predators from enemies into allies. The implications were staggering. Hyunwoo stood in the observation deck of the Cosmic Dawn, watching the stars slowly drift past through the massive viewing windows. The Vorax claw hung around his neck, its dark surface reflecting the distant starlight. He still could not quite believe what had happened on Kepler 442c. Behind him, the sounds of celebration continued in the ship's main recreation area. The crew members who had once dismissed him now competed for his attention. Interview requests flooded in from across the galaxy. Government officials wanted to meet with him. Military leaders sought his advice on interspecies relations, but the most meaningful change was in how his crewmates treated him. Kethmore approached hesitantly, his reptilian features showing embarrassment. The proud Velthan warrior who had mocked Hyunwoo's small stature now stood before him with genuine humility. Small one, Kethmore began, then caught himself. I mean Hyunwoo, I owe you an apology. And my life. Without your intervention we would all be dead. You do not owe me anything, Hyunwoo replied gently. We were all doing our jobs. No, Kethmore insisted. I was being a fool. I judged you by your size instead of your character. I mocked what I should have respected. In Velthan culture, such behavior brings great shame. The warrior extended his clawed hand in the traditional Velthan gesture of respect between equals. It was the same gesture he would give to another warrior who had proven himself in battle. Hyunwoo accepted the handshake, noting how careful Kethmore was to control his strength. The massive alien who could have crushed his bones now treated him with the delicacy reserved for honored elders. Velandra joined them at the viewing window, her crystalline form shimmering with excitement. The Xenobiology department wants to study your interaction methods. They believe you have discovered a new form of interspecies communication. I just listened, Hyunwoo said modestly. The Vorax were trying to communicate all along. We were too frightened to hear them. But that is exactly the point, Velandra insisted. Other species approach unknown creatures with fear or aggression. Humans approach them with curiosity. That makes you uniquely valuable in first contact situations. Captain Dong Hyun arrived with a communication pad in his hands. His expression was serious but pleased. Official word from Earth Command. You are being promoted to senior xenobiologist and assigned to lead all future first contact missions. Congratulations. The promotion was unprecedented. Hyunwoo was now the youngest being ever appointed to such a position, and certainly the smallest in physical stature. But his success with the Vorax had proven that size and strength were not the most important qualifications for interspecies diplomacy. There is more, Captain Dong-hyun continued. The Galactic Council wants to establish a new department for peaceful first contact protocols. They want you to head it up. Hyunwoo felt overwhelmed by the rapid changes in his life. Just weeks ago, he had been a forgotten maintenance engineer. Now he was being offered one of the most important positions in galactic politics. I need time to think about it, he said quietly. Of course, but Hyunwoo, you should know that this goes beyond just career advancement. Your success with the Vorax has changed how the entire galaxy views humanity. The captain was right. For decades, humans had been seen as a minor species in galactic affairs. They were neither the strongest like the Gorlak, nor the smartest like the Noxari, nor the most technologically advanced like the Etherians. They were average in most measurable ways. But Hyunwoo had demonstrated something that no other species possessed in quite the same degree: the ability to find common ground with any intelligent being, no matter how alien or dangerous. It was a uniquely human gift that made them invaluable as mediators and explorers. Over the following days, more details emerged about the alliance with the Vorax. Deathwalker and Silence had shared star charts showing safe routes through previously unexplored regions. The apex predators offered to serve as guides for human exploration ships, protecting them from dangers that would destroy conventional escorts. Most importantly, the Vorax had agreed to share their knowledge of other species. Their hunting territories covered vast areas of the galaxy, and they had encountered civilizations that no other known species had ever contacted. The possibilities are endless, Wispinala said during one of the debriefing sessions. The Etherian scouts' excitement was infectious. Entire regions of space will be open to exploration, new worlds, new species, new technologies. But the greatest change was in how the crew of the Cosmic Dawn related to each other. The strict hierarchy based on physical capabilities had been replaced by a more flexible system that valued different types of contributions. Nira, the Etherian diplomat, had started studying human interaction techniques. Your species has a gift for seeing individuals rather than just species stereotypes, she observed. You judge beings by their actions rather than their appearance. It was true. Where other species saw only apex predators, Hyunwoo had seen intelligent individuals with their own motivations and codes of honor. Where others saw threats to be destroyed, he had seen potential allies to be understood. The formal ceremony took place in the ship's main assembly hall. Representatives from all 12 species attended, along with holographic projections of government officials from across the galaxy. Even Deathwalker and Silence participated via secure communication link. Hyunwoo stood at the center of the room, no longer trying to hide in the back corner. The Vorax claw around his neck caught the light as he faced the assembled crowd. He was still the smallest being present, but nobody seemed to notice that anymore. 6 months ago, I was just an engineer fixing broken machines, he began. I never expected to become a diplomat or an explorer, but I learned something important on Kepler 4042c. He paused, looking around at the faces of his crewmates and colleagues. Size does not determine worth. Strength does not guarantee success. The most important tools for exploration are curiosity, respect, and the willingness to see others as individuals rather than enemies. The speech was short, but heartfelt. When it ended, the applause came from beings whose vocal cords could not produce human-like sounds, creating a symphony of clicks, harmonics, and vibrations that somehow conveyed universal approval. Later, as the Cosmic Dawn prepared for its next mission, Hyunwoo stood once again at the observation deck. This time he was not alone. His crewmates had taken to joining him during the quiet hours, seeking his perspective on upcoming challenges. Kethmore pointed toward a distant star cluster. Our next destination? 3 potentially habitable worlds with unknown inhabitants. The advanced scouts detected artificial structures but no communication signals. Probably another challenging first contact situation, Valandra added. The xenobiology teams are nervous about approaching without knowing what we might face. Hyunwoo smiled as he watched the stars. Every species we encounter will be different, but they will all have something in common with us, even if we have to look hard to find it. How can you be so confident? Nira asked. Because intelligence creates similar needs and desires across species barriers. The need for security, for understanding, for respect. If we approach them offering these things instead of demanding them, we will usually find a way to communicate. The ship's AI announced their arrival at the jump point for faster-than-light travel. In a few hours, they would emerge in a new star system, ready to make contact with unknown civilizations. But this time, Hyunwoo would not be relegated to maintenance duty while others handled the important work. This time, the smallest crew member would lead the way, proving once again that humanity's greatest strength was not their size or their weapons, but their remarkable ability to find friends among the stars. As the Cosmic Dawn jumped to hyperspace, carrying its mixed crew toward new adventures, one thing had become clear throughout the galaxy. The humans were no longer a minor species to be overlooked. They were the bridge builders, the peacemakers, the ones who could turn conflicts into alliances and enemies into friends. And it had all started with one small engineer who chose to approach the galaxy's most feared predators with respect instead of fear. In a universe full of giants, Hyunwoo had proven that being small did not make you weak. Sometimes it just made you harder to overlook when you did something truly extraordinary. The stars awaited, full of new species to meet and new alliances to forge. And leading the way was the smallest giant in the galaxy. Wearing the claw of an apex predator as a symbol that size means nothing when measured against the courage to see others as they truly are.